3 wins versus the Hawks and 1 to go, but each of those wins vastly different. What does that versatility say about Miami's quest for a title? Will small ball lineups be a sustainable weapon for the Heat? We'll answer that and more and look ahead to Game 5 of today's playoff edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. We've got a great show for you today, sandwiched in between games. Of course, there was that big Game 4 on Sunday. If you haven't checked out our recap of that game, make sure to go and do so. And, of course, always make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the best coverage possible. We're waiting for the outcome, of course, of Tuesday's, Game 5. That should be an opportunity for Miami to close out the series. Wes, you'll be there at the FTX Arena covering the game, so hopefully we'll have a recap immediately after that game to preview Miami advancing to potentially take on the Philadelphia 76ers, who will have an opportunity of their own to close out the Toronto Raptors on Monday night. We're recording this on a Monday afternoon. Some news and notes before Tuesday's Game 5. Kyle Lowry ruled out due to a hamstring injury. We talked about that. Following Game 4, it looked like whether he was going to be available or healthy or not, it suited him better just to shut him down for the rest of the series. It looks like Miami has a pretty good control of this situation with Atlanta. No need to put him out there, force him out there to potentially aggravate an injury. This is the long game for Miami. They're looking ahead to not just Philadelphia, but to a title quest. And to do so, you need Kyle at full strength. So no need to put him out there, further aggravate that injury, like I said. Also on the Atlanta side of things, Bogdan Bogdanovic and Clint Capella, who just came back from injury himself, both are questionable for Tuesday's Game 5. We'll see whether either of them play. Wes, you brought up that Bogdanovic looked like he was limping at some point late in the game. He's been their go-to scorer in late game situations, much more effective than anybody else on that Hawks roster. So if he's not available for the Hawks, that would certainly be a big blow to an offense that has already been stifled by Miami's great defense. But that is the subject of this first segment right here, because the small ball lineup has been incendiary for Miami. That's an Almost Famous reference if you got it. In any case, it's been really, really good. PJ Tucker at the 5 has been a difference maker for the Heat, and you've got some statistics that show exactly how dominant that small ball lineup has been.
Yeah, so the PJ at the 5 lineup in 40 possessions during this Hawks series is a plus 54.4 points per 100 possessions, which is bonkers. It has an offensive rating of a 137.5 points per 100 possessions in those 40 possessions. It has a defensive rating of 82.1 points per 100 possessions. So, needless to say, Tucker at the 5 is pretty much the lineup that has won this series for the Heat, right? And we're going to get into some of Bam's offensive struggles later on in the show and stuff like that. And it really isn't anything to take away from Bam, but it's just the spacing that PJ provides at that 5 spot. In addition to all the wing defenders that Miami has, including Victor Oladipo, who made his series debut on Sunday, and then just giving Jimmy Butler all of that space. And like we talked about yesterday, and Jimmy Butler's been the best player, not just in the series, but in the playoffs, and giving him all that space to work is keeping him in a flow, and it's making him that much more effective. It's been an awesome lineup. And I want to discuss whether or not it's something that the Heat should keep doing even after this series. It obviously works because of this Hawks matchup. There's we could get into the specifics of it, but it is killing Atlanta. I think we've seen enough of it where I would like to see more of it going forward in the playoffs, depending on the matchup. And so before we get to all,
is it kind of like zone defense though? Like, it's just like, it's kind of like something that you can bust out on occasion. It's not sustainable in terms of being the boilerplate for your defense. Obviously, you don't want to take Bam out of the situation, but in situations where Bam is limited or he's in foul trouble for some reason, then you break out PJ as the 5, and all of a sudden you provide just a different look. I mean, is that kind
Yeah.
of where you're leaning
Well,
towards this?
yeah. I mean, it's harder with the zone because in the zone you can just kind of throw out a play call from the sideline and it doesn't matter the personnel because everybody's trained on it and you could just enter
Right.
zone. Where PJ at the 5, you actually have to make substitutions and kind of
Yeah.
junk up your rotation pattern. So it's not something that you can just use kind of like impromptu that way.
Hmm.
And it's telling that the 2 games where we really saw PJ at the 5 were the 2 games where Bam got into early foul trouble. And that's really the only reason Spoelstra went to it. What
Hmm.
I think that there's a case to be made, and it kind of ties into the Oladipo stuff, that maybe Dedmon shouldn't be relied on as much. And instead of playing Dedmon 15 minutes a game, maybe it's 5 minutes a game, 6 minutes a game. And you're playing another 8 to 10 minutes with PJ Tucker at the 5, and he's maybe more of your go-to first center off the bench kind of thing, even though he starts. But maybe like your first backup center. So you take Bam out. You would have to rejigger the rotations a little bit, but you could
Yeah.
take Bam out and then get to PJ. It doesn't have to even be right away. It would just be maybe to close each half or something. I know you ideally want Bam to be on the floor here, but and we could zoom out even further. This is kind of the reason why everybody keeps saying Bam needs to get a 3-point shot. It's
Yeah.
because PJ could space the floor and how much room it creates for Jimmy. Bam doesn't do that, right? And we could talk all day long, and Eric Spoelstra could talk all day long about how the 3-point shot is overrated in terms of
Right.
spacing in regards to Bam Adebayo and all of this stuff. But it does matter. And we
It
see it mattering right now. And those stats that I just pulled up, like, it matters. And so until Bam develops that 3-point shot, which is not going to happen magically in the playoffs here, I do think we should see a little bit more. And I said 40 possessions all series in 4 games. That's an average of 10 possessions a game, right? Maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's you look at what Golden State does with their depth lineup. It's not the whole game. They don't start games that way. It doesn't make sense to do that, and doesn't make sense to do it to start PJ at the 5 for Miami, obviously, for a ton of different reasons. But if you could just get to it for a couple, 2 or 3 minutes each half, that's all we need. That's all we're talking about here. Because if you can have a net rating like that over the course of a 2 or 3 minute span, that can swing a game, right?
It did in Game 4, certainly. And
Yeah.
again, that was born out of necessity. I don't. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, even as we're talking about it here, because I just don't know that Spo feels comfortable kind of undercutting Bam to a certain extent. Like I think he's the go-to player as far as like what your defense does best. Like that's the base
Yeah.
package there. Having said that, like he's not going to take Bam out of the game if he's not in foul trouble. So I don't know that he's necessarily, and I don't know that he necessarily wants to diminish what Dwayne Dedmon provides either. And so he's not going to just like bench him again.
Well, he
That's part
should.
of-
I mean, he should. I mean, look, and maybe it's matchup dependent here, but if you're going up against Philadelphia in the next round and Joel Embiid is like maybe winning the Bam Adebayo matchup, it could be useful to just throw PJ there at the 5 and be like, well, you know what? We're not winning with our big man versus their big man, so let's just space them out completely and take Embiid away from the rim, and that frees up Jimmy Butler and Kyle
so
Lowry and
bring
Tyler
in
Hero to
Paul
get down
Reed
low.
for Philadelphia.
Yeah,
Right?
as much as Sixers fans love Paul Reed, I'm not exactly scared of him. So I that's more of what I'm saying. It does. You can let Bam Adebayo keep his minutes. Maybe you're not taking him off the floor to end each half. To your point, you don't want to diminish his role. He wants to be on the floor, and he should be. I'm not saying that the Heat are better with PJ at the 5 than Bam Adebayo. Let's be clear. They are better when Bam Adebayo plays. That is 100% certain. But I do think that maybe lowering Dedmon's minutes and just finding pockets in the game to play PJ at the 5 where it is a little bit of just like a utility thing that you use here and there would be worthwhile for the Heat just to explore. And maybe it's matchup dependent. Maybe it's just super effective against the Hawks and it might not be as effective against the Sixers. But I think they should at least look at it is all I'm saying. Can we discuss names or you have another point on that?
No, I just wanted to say, like, I mean, can't you, in theory, do the same thing with Bam? Like, position him outside the circle. Like, I mean, he doesn't.
They don't
have to
respect
be.
him that way. They don't guard him out there. They guard PJ out there.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, that's a good point. Bam position behind the arc wouldn't necessarily draw another defender out there.
And it takes Bam away from what he does well, right? Like you really do want him getting into that floater area in the paint where he could get to his spots and where he can facilitate from the low post and do all those things. Like he is he does so many things that PJ doesn't really do, and that's good for Bam. I would love for Bam to do these things. This is why he needs to develop that 3-point shot and why it's not a dumb talking point, even though Spoelstra yelled at me earlier in the season when I brought it up. But
You sure did. You've never gotten over that. You're scarred. You got the PTSD bad, buddy.
I got scolded. Not as bad as Ira yesterday, but I got scolded.
I did see that eventually. That was very interesting. A little exchange there.
We got some nickname options from our listeners on our YouTube page under the comments from the recap. You ready for them?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I named it the PJ5 lineup, not because I thought it was a good nickname, but that's just what I write in my notes for shorthand. I said that on the show. I said, and you said, hey, send in your requests, your ideas for the PJ5 lineup, right? So we've got a few of them. Anti-death lineup.
Okay.
And the guy even explained, I didn't write down the names of the people that submitted these, but whoever was explained, this would be like if the Heat met the Warriors in the finals, the anti-death lineup with PJ at the 5, with Victor Oladipo on the court, is they have enough defenders where that's the group that could beat Golden State's new death lineup with Jordan Poole and Steph and Klay Thompson and all that stuff. Or not maybe beat, but obviously counter. Like, look at what Denver has done against the death lineup. It hasn't been good. That's because Denver doesn't have anybody that guards on the perimeter, even kind of like a little bit. And this is a bunch of guys who do guard on the perimeter a whole lot of a bit. So I kind of like the anti-death lineup, but that's kind of a series specific one, right?
Yeah. Yes. Death lineup usually reserved for the Warriors. I think it's something that
you wouldn't call it like the anti-death lineup against the Hawks or the Sixers. Like, that wouldn't make any sense.
That's right. That's right. So Capella's not Draymond Green out there.
That's for sure. Small and different.
Small and different. Is that like tongue in cheek? Am I missing a reference here?
I thought you would know. I didn't know. So I don't. Maybe we're missing a reference. I'm sorry if we're missing it. Guy who left this submission, tell us where we're wrong here. There's a good one here. I'm going to skip it. I'm going to save it for last.
Okay.
Here's the another one. The Bulwark lineup.
Okay.
So I kind of mucking up what the other team does, I guess. The Clamp Squad. I kind of like the Clamp Squad.
Clamp Squad's
not my favorite here. It's my second favorite.
It's got legs. I could see that one taken off. The Clamp
Squad. Yeah. All Gabe's got to be a part of that, I think.
Yeah, he's done his work against Trey, that's for sure.
He's been the clamper on Trey. All right, here's my favorite. The Doghouse.
The Doghouse. Well, I mean, that's the quote going around there. They're the kennel, right? The Doghouse.
They keep calling themselves the kennel. I like this. The Doghouse. The Wolf Pack. I mean, we could keep going with this analogy, right? Like,
that's a good
like
one.
A Doghouse doesn't really tell me lineup. Like Wolf Pack, that's like a 5-person group. Or like, I don't know.
Well, the doghouse, like, I mean, to use the description, right? Like, if you're in the doghouse, that's you're in trouble, right?
Right. The other team's in trouble.
Situation. The other team's in trouble. Exactly. You send the doghouse out there, it's going to put the other team in trouble. I mean, it works. All right.
House has 5 letters.
All right. Now we're reaching with the numbers there, but I saw a reference to the Thanos snap.
Yeah.
Did you see that one on YouTube?
So, okay. And you know what? I not only saw it on YouTube, there's somebody in my Twitter feed sending me like a Thanos picture with a Victor Oladipo on one of his fingers or rings or something, like his face on it. And
that's Henry. That's a Heat Twitter legend right now. He's he gets everybody excited after big games, I think.
Okay, so I don't, and I saw the movies. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. Like So what am I supposed to believe? Like, this is the Thanos lineup where he snaps his fingers and then everybody's vaporized? Is that the idea?
You got it. I think that's exactly the description they put there. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you're not missing anything. I mean, listen, it's not rocket science. It's comic book science. I mean,
feels like rocket science sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
I told you the story how I skipped like a bunch of movies by accident and I had no idea what was going on.
That's right. You did mention that.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at from a Marvel standpoint. But so what would we call that? The finger snap lineup, like the Thanos lineup. What's that called? The Rings of Terror. Like, what is it? What's it called?
Wow, I don't even know where to begin here. Like, no, they're not the Rings of Terror. The Infinity Gems on the Infinity Gauntlet. That's the comic book reference there.
So the Gauntlet. Can we call it the lineup? The Gauntlet lineup.
Yeah, something like that. The Death Gauntlet or something like that. I don't know. That's a little. It's a little dark. I mean, I like the incorporation of something comic book related, but no, I don't. You didn't even mention the fact that I mentioned Super Saiyan or whatever the hell that is.
Super Saiyan. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that just goes to show you. Sorry. Dragon Ball Q. What is it? I don't even know.
Z, and you knew that.
Only because you mentioned it.
Wait, no, I like the no, but the Thanos thing is good. So what would you call it? The Death Gauntlet? Like this is your territory. We're gonna right now. The doghouse is the leader in the clubhouse. But give me a Thanos inspired one.
No, that's it. The Death Gauntlet would be it. But
Is that what it's called? The Death Gauntlet?
no, it's called the Infinity Gauntlet.
Okay, so that's what we would call it then. The Infinity Gauntlet.
Okay, but I just don't see exactly how Infinity applies to such a defensive-minded group.
Okay, so we don't want to steal Death from the Warriors' Death lineup because that's like copyright or whatever. We want to stay clean here on Locked On Heat. So legally speaking, so maybe like the Gauntlet lineup. Would people understand that if we just threw that out there as like something Thanos inspired, or that's not good enough? Okay, no, so the Gauntlet, no, Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity Stones. What's in it? Is that right?
Infinity, gems? Yeah, the Infinity Stones, Infinity Gems, yes. I'm looking it up right now. Okay, call it the Miami Gauntlet. That's what it is. The defense is Thanos lever. It erases players in a snap. Call it the Miami Gauntlet. This is by Locks the Ripper on YouTube.
All right, so we've got the Miami Gauntlet.
Miami Gauntlet and the Doghouse. I have to say,
what about just the Thanos? What if we just called it the Thanos lineup?
Oh, I just... The Thanos lineup, I don't know. That's like, I dig all this. I just don't know that if people would get the reference at this point. The Doghouse is more Miami.
What? Even I saw this movie, David. Everybody, like, isn't these movies like grossing like $1 billion a year? Everybody understands this reference. If I saw this movie, everybody saw this movie. I cannot tell you how big of a deal it was that I saw this movie.
I think the Doghouse is more Miami culture. I'll be honest with you. Like, I could see Bam wearing a Doghouse t-shirt.
Yeah, you're right. Bam's not going to care about being in the Thanos lineup. Bam's going to care about being in the Doghouse lineup.
Right.
Bam's not a part of the Doghouse lineup. That's the thing.
That's the irony here. Yeah, that's the irony.
All right, so the Doghouse. All right, let us know in the comments if you like the lineups. We're always open to more recommendations. I can tell you what, these lineup names are better than whatever new Death lineup names the Warriors thing is coming up with, like the pool party stuff. Have you seen this? Like the PTSD lineup, they're calling it the 5Gs. All these different names, and I'm like, you know what? No, you guys already had that. Like, just be the new Death lineup V3 or whatever it is. Like, you have an awesome name already. Don't take it for granted. But I like Doghouse. Doghouse is good so far.
I like it too. All right, well, we'll move on and we'll talk a little bit about Miami's versatility and how it applies throughout the rest of the playoffs before looking ahead to Tuesday's Game 5. But before we do that, just want to tell you about a new sponsor of our show. Well, it's not really a new sponsor, but it's a longtime sponsor. Today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks. Daily fantasy made easy, and easy is really what they're all about. As fantasy props and pick'ems get more popular, PrizePicks is making it easy for you to play. Wes, I know that you're a big fan. That you've got that gambling thing down pat. I know you've got PrizePicks. You use it as well as anybody, and you've made a ton of money on that because you know the numbers. You know how easy it is. They've got the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. They offer more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. PrizePicks offers any prop that you can think of, from point scored to rebounds to even steals. You check out the PrizePicks Power Play. Here's how it works. You predict the over-under on a player's fantasy production, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected fantasy totals. For a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive offer just for our listeners. You get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores just a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the code NBA for $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry gets even a single point. Do it all using the award-winning app on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Plus, PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. So don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com. Use the promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. Listen to Locked On Now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or watch it on the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. I'll be on Locked On NBA tonight and potentially, every Monday night and Tuesday morning, covering the playoffs. And by this point, we'll find out whether or not the Sixers have moved on, but that's a topic of conversation for another time. Right now, we're looking ahead to Miami's Game 5, and one of the things that stood out to me following Game 4 is that Miami's 3 wins, they just have found a unique recipe in each one. And I'm wondering, on the positive side of this, look, in Game 1, they had the Duncan Robinson explosion for 27 points. They got this versatility. They punched Atlanta, blew them out. Atlanta had no idea what to do with it. And again, the excuse was Atlanta was tired. Miami was well rested. They were practiced. They had gone through every possible scenario in anticipation of that Game 1 matchup. You had Kyle Lowry out there, etc. And Game 2 was a very different recipe. You had the same amount of rest in between both games. You had Jimmy Butler go out there for 45 points. Monstrous night, of course. Everybody else kind of take a step back, although Gabe Vincent stepped up and had his moments. A couple guys stepping in their role. Game 3, of course, was the unfortunate loss. Game 4, now you have Jimmy kind of go supernova to some extent, but you also have the defensive clamps, the doghouse in effect. And I think that's where you really start to kind of put your imprint defensively on this series. Now, looking ahead to Game 5 and through the rest of the series, the rest of the playoffs, excuse me, I just Miami's roster is built with this kind of interchangeable part system, right? You have one guy step up, whether it's Jimmy in terms of scoring, whether it's complementary scoring from Duncan or Gabe or Bam or anybody else. Defensively, you have all these different players that can step up. The fact that you were even talking about taking out Bam Adebayo, an all NBA defender and a defensive player of the year candidate, out of the lineup and placed for a 5-man lineup that might be even more effective defensively speaks volumes. And you just kind of look at this team and the way it's assembled and all this versatility, and you wonder, is it? Can it be a negative? Is there a downside to Miami having all this versatility attached to it, and the fact that they've had to win every game differently? Or maybe I'm just being too much of a homer here, but to me, it just seems like this is such an additional weapon for Miami that they can go in there and find ways to win in different ways.
No, it's a positive. And I think the conversation around the Heat and as it relates to their ability to win the championship this year has focused maybe a little bit too much on what they can't do and what they don't have, namely an A-list MVP level type of star. They don't have that player. Jimmy Butler is playing at that level, but they don't have that player. That's the national narrative around the Heat, right? Is that they don't have that player. I'm not here to debate whether or not that's true, but it has not focused enough on what they do have, and more importantly, on what they have that other teams don't have. Look at what the Brooklyn Nets are doing right now, losing 0-3 to the Boston Celtics in that series. It looks like they are going to get eliminated in the first round, which is going to be a huge disappointment considering where the Nets' expectations were going into the season. Myriad excuses don't matter. It's a disappointing season for Brooklyn. Steve Nash has got no options. He's like, all right, what small guard am I going to put out there with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant? Is it going to be Patty Mills? Is it going to be Goran Dragic? Is it going to be Seth Curry? Which one is it going to be? And they don't really have different kinds of options. You use the word versatility. They don't have versatility. They just have a whole lot of the same thing. And they're like, all right, which small guard today has a hot hand? That's it. Their most versatile player is Bruce Brown. He's 6'4". Okay. So what the Heat do have, Brooklyn, they got the A-list talent, right? A lot of people think that they have 2 A-listers in Kyrie and KD, even though I would push against the Kyrie thing, but a lot of people think that. Miami, a lot of people don't think they have that A-lister, but they have so much depth of versatility that they don't run into those problems, right? A lot of teams without that depth of versatility that the Heat have would have lost last night, right? Once Bam gets into early foul trouble and all this stuff is happening and they can't really find ways to get the defense going and all this stuff, they don't have a Victor Oladipo to just pull off the bench and just be like, you go in and do stuff now. And the Heat do, right? If a team is picking on Duncan Robinson or Tyler Herro a little too much defensively, then they can go to Victor Oladipo, and then within an instant, within a Thanos snap of things, they could vaporize that weakness. It'd be like, hey, you wanted to just push our Duncan Robinson and Tyler Herro weakness over and over and over again? Well, guess what? Now we don't have that. Now we've got 5 guys out there. But you could put. I think the doghouse lineup really should be, if we're gonna, because I'm uncomfortable with Bam not being part of the doghouse. I thought about it during the commercial break. That shouldn't be the name for the not Bam lineup. It should be the doghouse lineup is Bam, PJ, Butler, Oladipo, Lowry, or Gabe if Lowry's not available. That's the doghouse lineup. And that's a lineup with zero weaknesses defensively. Zero. Can literally switch everything, can ISO everything, can play everything whichever way you want, can zone up, can do anything you want that lineup to do. And so I'm with you. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Heat are cruising to a championship. It just means that this is something that they have that I don't know another team in the Eastern Conference or in the NBA in the playoffs. Maybe outside of Phoenix, if Chris Paul is healthy.
Well,
And even Phoenix probably doesn't have this level of it, right? I don't know
I'm
that
glad that
has
you're bringing up
level.
Phoenix, even in context, of this. They're floundering without Devin Booker. Like they're tied 2-2 to a New Orleans team that's got a lot of juice right now, a lot of energy. But let's be honest, that New Orleans team isn't particularly good. That they played better after the CJ McCollum trade and everything else. They got Herb Jones and his All NBA defense. Great. The only reason they're in this series is because Devin Booker isn't playing there.
Yeah.
Miami is probably the best team to handle the loss of a superstar player like Jimmy Butler and still be able to find a way.
I mean, the Heat could lose the series if they didn't have, maybe not the Hawks series, but they could be like if they lose Jimmy Butler, then forget it, right? I mean, that's
we say that like we haven't seen Tyler step up, like we haven't seen potentially Victor Oladipo step up if he got the starting nod. I mean, if let's say the injury was to Jimmy and not Kyle Lowry, who would start in place of Jimmy? Would it be Victor? Would it be Tyler?
It might be Vic at this point. I still think you would continue to bring Tyler off the bench. It would probably be Vic or Caleb. Right. I mean, and during the regular season, it was Caleb every time Jimmy Butler didn't play. But like the Heat aren't going anywhere without Jimmy Butler, just like Phoenix isn't going anywhere without Devin Booker.
Right.
We could discuss, all right, how many games would they get taken off of in a series and all this, whatever. But like they're not going anywhere without their top two guys.
That's fair. But at the same time, I like Miami's chances of being able to accept the kind of hardships that will befall any team on their quest for a playoffs.
But not even hardships. We could discuss hardships like losing Lowry and Devin Booker or Jimmy Butler hypothetically or whatever. But like, it's not even necessarily like hardships. It's just like, hey, where is this series going? And like Brooklyn didn't have any hardships.
Right. No, you're
they
right.
Just stink.
The in-series adjustments that are necessary for you to win and to continue to move on. Miami has more options at their disposal than any other team, and that's the strength of this roster. And you bring up a great point that despite the fact that everybody's pointing out they don't have that superstar, what they've got is great players that are like, let's say they don't have an A-list player, they've got B through Z, and that's the
how many players on this roster would you say you would trust with playoff minutes of the 15 guys on this roster?
I mean, I think we've seen that, like 10, right? At least
I would say about 10, right? I mean, you're starting 5 plus Tyler. We've seen Dedmon, we've seen Caleb. Gabe, that's was it 9 that I just said? Plus Vic is 10. I'm right there. I'm at 10.
I mean, at this point,
and
really,
Duncan, so like 11.
Yeah, I mean, I would feel comfortable with Markieff too. Like he had played well.
Markieff 12. Yeah, Markieff is he's got playoff experience. Markieff, we haven't seen him all series. I mean, I'm not at the point where I'd want Udonis Haslem in there. Probably not, Omer Yurtseven, probably not him. Apologies to whoever else I'm forgetting, but it's those. Yeah, I think 11 or 12. Right, 11 or 12. 11 or 12. Yeah,
that's pretty good. That's an incredible.
No player, no team in the league can even get close to that. I mean, even Phoenix, when you're really thinking about them, they've got Cam Johnson, who's awesome off the bench. Yeah. Cameron Payne. Finals experience. You trust him. He's not like an incredible player, but you trust him to play some minutes. Obviously, JaVale McGee's been great for them. Sure. So they're at 8, right? Yeah. That's about it.
I mean, look, I get the idea, and I brought this up early in the season at some point.
9.
Like, I understand the need to tighten a rotation to lean into what your best players can do, but in Miami's case, it behooves them to be able to go outside of that thought process, to be able to say, today I can bring in this player, expand that rotation a little bit. I mean, Victor Oladipo came in there after having not played a single second in the previous 3 games and inspired his team to reach a heightened level of defensive awareness and tenacity that they just hadn't been able to achieve. And that I mean, that speaks incredible volumes to me about how good this team is, and I look how good Oladipo is as a player. Like that he, despite his offense being very wonky and shaky still out there, like he was a great active rebound. He made passes to everybody. He's a guy who could drive to the hoop, creating offense for others. Like, I mean, he was a presence out on the floor despite not having out there. And that's why you bring that guy in there. And that's why Miami has as good a chance of any of moving on in the NBA playoffs. But we'll wrap it up because I know we could probably talk about this for another half an hour, but eventually somebody's going to want to probably watch something else on YouTube other than us or listen to a different podcast. But we'll talk about a little bit about Game 5 and we'll preview the series and hopefully Miami will be able to close it out. But before we do that, just wanted to tell you a little bit about BetOnline, your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. I have not been able to catch a Marlins game yet, but I'm excited to do so. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information. From live betting to playoffs, esports, and more, head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online, where the game starts. Just a reminder, you can always reach us via email at LockedOnHeat. Send in those suggestions for different names, different things that you want us to talk about. If you want to send in questions that we'll answer for an upcoming mailbag episode, make sure to do so. Again,
there's a peanut butter and jelly thing sitting there for the PJ5 lineup. Just throwing ideas out. Just little food for thought. Just some inspiration, some inspo.
PJ. Well, you got PJ, you've got Bam, you've got Jimmy.
So well, Bam can't be part. So Bam's the doghouse lineup.
All right. PB and J. Who's the B then? Who's the B? That's the thing. It's gotta be Bam. You're throwing us off here. I don't know. Like,
sorry.
This whole episode, like, we've got 32 minutes here.
And I get obsessed about this stuff.
Yeah, my fault. Okay. That's all right. We should have an off-season viewing of the Infinity Gauntlet just so everybody can see. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit. Again, send us questions, comments. You can always reach us via Twitter. Use the hashtag AskHelloHeat. And as always, make sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. Game 5 Tuesday, you'll be there at the arena. Mm-hmm. What are you expecting with Capella and Bogdanovich potentially out? Trae Young, the focus will be on him. I have to be honest with you. I'll own up to it. I was not confident heading into Game 4. I thought, unfortunately, that Miami was going to be outclassed. And in the first quarter, we saw Atlanta play with a lot more intensity, a lot more focus. And then, of course, the Oladipo shift takes place. But looking ahead to Game 5, I don't think there's any chance for Atlanta to come back.
I would be really surprised if we had another game on Thursday night. If we had a Game 6 on Thursday night at this point. We're at the point in this series where, well, first of all, Bogdanovich and Capella can't play. They're listed as questionable in the injury report today. But like that Bogdanovich has been Atlanta's best fourth quarter scorer, and Capella gave them a nice boost in the first half there. If they're not there, I don't see a way that Atlanta has a chance in this. Even if they are available, I still like Miami's chances. They've just been that much better all series. I think they close it out at home. I really don't think that they want to take another trip to Atlanta. I think this is it. And as far as potential adjustments and stuff, like, we're past the point. This is Game 5. Like, there are no more adjustments left in this series. The Hawks know exactly what the Heat are going to do. With injuries or no injuries, they're going to focus on Trae Young. They're going to do their best to take him out of the game. They've done that for 3 of the 4 games this series. They've just completely taken him out of the game. So they know what's going to happen there. The Heat know exactly what they're going to do. And that's it. Like, the Hawks are going to try to space the floor. They're going to try to get lucky with some threes and try to wipe Miami off the floor that way, like they kind of did in Game 3. But that's it. We're past the point of adjustments. It's now just time. Whichever team executes better will win the game, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, they got lucky in the first half there with DeAndre Hunter. He had a very good first quarter in particular. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else he can't do. Like, Capella went in there, and I talked about this in their Game 4 recap. Like, he helped Trae Young get a little bit more spacing to get that shot off. Early in the first quarter, it looked like that might be working between Hunter collapsing the defense to some extent or stretching it out a little bit because he was hitting from the perimeter. It forced Miami's defense a little bit to shift a little bit, to get off to what their game plan was. And then Capella was out there again. That was a little bit of a shift. Now Miami can prepare for it. They know what to expect. Like, there's nothing else that Atlanta has no ace up their sleeve, no nothing else
Yeah.
that they could break out there that would shift. To tie in what we were talking about before, this is the strength of what Miami can do. Is like, is it going to be Victor Oladipo tomorrow? Is it going to be Caleb Martin? Is it going to be Duncan Robinson, who already scored 27 points? Like, has any player in this Hawks team scored 27 points throughout the series? Because I can't recall that they have. I mean, maybe Bogdanovich or Young came close at one point, but this is a backup in Duncan, who's had a big game and has to be respected as a legitimate threat. And of course, you've got Jimmy Butler, the best player in the series, if not the best player in the playoffs. All these different things that Miami can do. Atlanta has no answers in Game 5. There's nothing else to do. And I like Nate McMillan. I know some people are already calling for his firing, that he's shown a lack of inspiration. But this is just the roster they assembled. There's not much he can possibly do. They just haven't had it all year, and I don't think you're going to find it in this playoff matchup. So I'm with you. I think they close it out in Game 5, and I think we can start looking ahead to a potential matchup with the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yep, I'm with you. I would be shocked if it wasn't Heat Sixers pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. And of course, we'll have some great guests from the Philadelphia side of things if and when Miami does advance, or let's say when they advance. But thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.